Hello and welcome back to 8 Minutes to Chew On. I'm joined by Pastor Roelof. Pastor, hello.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And so you preached a really good sermon this past weekend. We're going through this series on purpose, which is such an important thing. And the main thing that you were talking about is that we were created by God, for His pleasure. And so people may be listening to this and they're like, whoa, okay, what does that mean for me? And so Pastor, what does that mean that we were created by God, and for His pleasure?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing thing when it actually starts sinking from your head into your heart. There's nothing that you can compare it with here on earth. You make a chicken cage or whatever, a bird cage, you made it for your purposes, but I don't think it will ever really get that feeling that the creator of this universe made you, formed you, shaped you before the creation of this world, had a plan for you and had a purpose for your life. I think it's the thought for me is just too big. I can't really comprehend it. So trying to explain it more than just saying that's wow, that's amazing. That's it, So I think it's something that I meditate on quite a bit. Is just to think, wow, that gives me such joy actually, such joy to think that the Father of heaven, the Creator of heaven, the God who's just made everything, made me specifically. And has a specific purpose for me. So I don't really want to mess it up.
Sure, that's such an incredible thought. Yeah. And when you really think about it and you really let that sink in, that then should shape all our actions. And something you said, which is so interesting, is that everything we do for God's pleasure is worship.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like for us, worship is usually just the song you're singing during a specific time in church. But it's so much bigger than that. And something you mentioned is that we are all hardwired deep within us is the need to worship something, And so then if everything that we're doing for God's pleasure is worship, and we all have that need for worship, how do we do that? How do we do that?
I think here again it is something that one has got to practice. The more you become aware of it, the more we talk about it, and the more we hold one another accountable about it as well. It's also important, because I think now and then we just got to stop and say, hey, remember, your life is worship. And how are you worshiping today? I think if we have accountability partners where we can actually, a wife, a husband, a friend, a fellow student or brother or sister, is just to say, listen, remember that the way you think, the way you act, the way you react to people is all worship. How does God perceive your worship now? And so on. And so when we move away from the fact that worship is only song, but the worship is my life, then I should ask that question. And maybe I put out my phone, and every 2 hours it should go and say, how do you think God perceives your worship right now? Yeah. So whether you eat, doesn't Corinthians say, whatever we do, do it all for the glory of God? Whether I drive, how does God perceive your worship? I think we need to move away completely almost from this thing, worship equals singing, worship is, because that's how we've been brainwashed, if I can put it like that, trained, is now to retrain yourself to say, worship is my life, my lifestyle, my thinking, my relationships. Yeah. And then how does God see my worship right now?
Sure. That's so good. And so, Pastor, you mentioned an important point on Sunday with worship about surrender being the heart of worship. And so can you actually just go into that a little bit more? Because you're saying that, worship is not just the songs, it's our lifestyle. And so if surrender drives that, can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think surrendered means that I've bowed the knee and I've handed myself over to an authority, a higher authority. When I surrender to a policeman, I now do what that policeman tells me to do with my hands behind my back or my hands raised, and so on. So I think that's what I said on Sunday as well. The cowboy movies when I was a kid, hands up, and you do it with a water pistol, and everybody goes yes, hands up, I basically am saying, not only is my knee, but my life, everything I hand over to you. You're in charge. You're fully in charge. Yeah. And I think that again is a lifestyle that we need to practice. And a lot of it comes down, Zoe, and I don't think we do it enough, is accountability relationships. Yeah. You know, is when I say surrender, what do I mean? Surrendered means given over to a higher authority for his or her purpose. Yeah. All right, so now, God, I surrender to you. So in other words, what I do, how I live, who I am, you're the boss.
All yours.
You're the boss. What you say goes. And sometimes God will expect me, like Abraham, to do things that my mind... Joshua going to Jericho and fighting with musicians.
Yeah.
You know, that was like, wow, a little bit like, okay. But that's a surrendered life. It's your will, your way. You see, it's one way to say, I will do the will of God, but the other thing is to say, I'll also do it your way.
Sure. Yeah.
And that we got to find in relationship with God. That's not all here.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes the Spirit of God reveals that to us. Sometimes through the relationships with other people, God reveals that. But I want to do it your way. Not just your will, but your way.
Sure.
And marriage, your way. Family, your
God's
way. Career, your way. And so once I know what God says, I've also got to ask him, how do I do this now? And it's a daily relationship. And I'm preaching a little bit out. Come to church, listen to this podcast next week. This Sunday is a little bit on that friendship with God. You know, because friends determine very much how other friends live.
Yes.
We shape one another. Yeah. And my friend must shape my life.
Sure. That's so good, Pastor. You've really mentioned some good points. And so our challenge to you this week is just, first of all, take some time to reevaluate. Are you living a life that worships God?
Yes.
And who are you accountable to? You know, who is it? Is it a friend? Is it a wife? Is it a husband? Who are you accountable to? Just to reevaluate and look at the way you are living life. And then we will see you in church on Sunday for then the next part of the sermon series.